Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Wednesday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. Is LeBron James stat padding? One former NBA player says yes. We'll break it down next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers first listen of every day, Monday through Friday. No matter how, where you get your podcasts, this one's always going to be free. We're never putting it behind a paywall, certainly not during the holiday season. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where over 37,000 subscribers are all hanging out, talking to each other, talking to us, and participating, Andy, in the single biggest sports podcast network in this or any other universe that we certainly know about. Thank you for helping make us number one and Locked On Lakers one of, and this is no lie, one of the biggest shows on the biggest network. So we certainly appreciate all of your support. Plenty to cover in this episode as the Lakers get close to starting a critical 3-game road trip before they get back to NBA Cup play. Starts Thursday in Toronto against this scrappy and pretty, Raptors team is doing pretty well. But we're going to talk about LeBron, Andy, because there have been accusations about LeBron and his motives and what he's up to. And those accusations, at least to me, do get into a larger conversation about what exactly his role is on this team.
Yeah, on the Run It Back TV show with Michelle Beadle and Lou Williams and Chandler Parsons, in talking about the Phoenix loss and also LeBron maintaining the double-digit scoring streak that goes back to, not a typo, 2007.
I was about to say birth.
To put this in perspective, before we get into the quote and the conversation, this streak began when George W. Bush was still president. Like, that's how freaking long this thing goes back. That is honestly nuts. But anyway, he was talking about this and said, quote, I didn't like it, talking about LeBron pursuing the life of the streak and also the way he played in the game in general. This is the first time in my life I saw an older LeBron James who played and looked like his age. LeBron, he did not look like himself, which is for me the first time I've ever seen him like that. So it was a nice gesture for JJ to keep him in there, and he was definitely hunting for it, being the 10 points to keep the streak alive. He was not coming out until he got it. This just felt like the first step on the way out and kind of catering to his legacy as opposed to focusing on the season and the game that was already over. Congrats, I guess, but honestly, I didn't love it. It was just obvious what he was doing. And
just as a reminder, this was the Monday's loss to Phoenix. LeBron had 4 points at halftime, I believe.
Yes.
And had to hustle in the fourth quarter, even with the game more or less out of reach. In a game he might have otherwise.
No, not more or less. Definitely. The way they were playing.
He was playing while it wasn't, and then stayed in certainly a little longer than he otherwise probably would have if he had, say, 23 points before being removed from the game after he got the 10 points he needed.
Right. And look, I think there is an interesting discussion to be had from this, even though I think in some ways Chandler Parsons, who it should be just noted, he has become in the media space, I think, a hot take artist, and this stuff is in that wheelhouse. Do with that info what you will, but he likes these sort of attention-grabbing takes. But I think he landed on something interesting, even though I don't think he necessarily meant to land on what actually is interesting. Like, there is no question LeBron was on the floor during this, as you said, out-of-reach game. Like, after the Lakers had completely bleeped the bed, they were down by double digits. They were outplayed on both ends of the floor just dramatically. He was out there to maintain that streak. Like, that's just plainly obvious. If you claim anything else, you are just gaslighting people. Like, he checked out right after he hit the 10 points. And, there are going to be people who debate the significance or even the dignity of this sort of streak, if it's being maintained and achieved by any means necessary. Like, so it's clear, I don't at least thus far, the way it's been maintained, I don't have an issue with it. But if somebody else does for those reasons, I'd be lying if I said I don't get why, even though, again, I don't agree.
Well, yeah. Go ahead and finish your thought. But I mean,
but what I think though needs to be remembered, and I think Chandler Parsons glossed over this, is LeBron did not disrupt anything in the way he was going about doing this. The game was completely like in hand for Phoenix at that point. He was not gunning the offense out of what they were looking to do in order to get his 10 points. Like there was nothing other than if you think LeBron simply should have been sitting because he's pushing 41 and you're thinking big picture, there was nothing small or big picture being disrupted. He was going for the streak, sort of the story within the game. So regardless of what you think of how he's going about doing this or how much it matters to him, the idea that somehow he was putting his legacy above the game and the goals of the season, at least in this context with this example, is ridiculous. I mean, it's just patently false.
I look at it this way: there are a couple things. First, you are correct. It was actually specifically because the game was the type of game that it was, that he's not really stat padding, and he's certainly not interfering with the team. And of all, I mean, it's a really cool streak, and it's really fun, and it's kind of amazing. It will probably end at some point, but maybe not. It just keeps going. And I totally understand why LeBron wants to preserve it. 100% get it. And don't have a problem with it. I also think it's about 29th probably on the list of things that are legacy defining for LeBron James. Most people, I think most basketball fans, if they're aware of it, are kind of, I think, sort of in the background, vaguely aware of this streak. But I don't think it's not like front and center. It's not Cal Ripken's consecutive game streak that defined in a lot of ways who Cal Ripken was as a player. But I think, to me, the Chandler Parsons thing is interesting, not for the stat padding part, but for the first part of it.
It's actually also not stat padding really quick, because the 10 points he got actually brought his numbers down. It's actually the opposite of what we define as stat padding.
He means stat padding just in stat padding relative to this one.
But the reason the phrase matters is stat padding is associated with greediness on some level on the court. Like Ricky Davis,
he's misusing the term,
right?
Whether consciously or probably consciously or maybe unconsciously.
But it matters.
He's misusing the term in a way that he knows is going to get people's attention, because people have been accusing LeBron of stat padding for years. And so
again, I think the distinction matters.
Sure. But like, I think, to me, the part that's really interesting, and that I know Lakers fans are debating, is the first part of it, which is, this is the first time in my life I saw an older LeBron James who played and looked like his age. And, we've talked about it a little bit over the course of this week, certainly in the 5 games that LeBron has played since coming back from, missing the first 14 games, was it, with sciatica?
14.
And, he's had stretches, 2, 3, 4 minutes at a time where he looked really good. But over the course of games, it has been up and down. And, Monday, for example, was just not just even bad. It was invisible. It was a game that you just didn't realize LeBron was even playing in, which is strange, to say the least. But it's just, I want to let, it's the part about aging that I think is really worth the larger conversation. And I do want to mention, before we go to break, I forgot to mention at the top that today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. But after the break, I want to get into this question of Father Time and whether or not, LeBron James finally has been hit by the old guy truck. So we'll do that next.
Locked on Lakers, as now clearly established, is brought to you by Game Time, and the World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994, not when LeBron's 10-point streak began, although it feels that way. With 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive, and getting tickets is going to be really hard unless you're using the Game Time app, which is clutch. It finally gives fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track down price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. It's great for Brian and his family because he and his whole family love soccer. You pick a game.
Football.
Yeah, you pick a game, you tap a section, you have your tickets locked in within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for the fine print, and prices include the fees up front. So there's no last minute surprises at the checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets, every match, every concert or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download that app, make an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go.
We'll try, by the way, to get to, if we don't do it today, we will definitely do it tomorrow. Rui Hachimura had some really interesting comments following the loss on Monday about touches, specifically that he didn't touch the ball at all.
May I really quickly set the stage for this, even if we don't get to it, just because I had told our listeners, viewers,
it's the show's half yours, Andy. You may do whatever you want. Within reason.
The reason I want to do this is just because I had said that we were talking about Rui only having one shot in this game, 0 rebounds, total uninvolvement, that I was predicting his touches and usage for the game would be insanely low. Those numbers came out on Tuesday. Looked them up. 23 minutes, Rui had 16 touches. It's the same amount of touches. He touched the ball 16 times in 23 minutes. It's insanely low. It's the same amount of touches that Jackson Hayes had in 9 fewer minutes. His usage for the game, 1.7 in the first quarter.
Sounds like your GPA, Andy.
That's a little higher. But in the first quarter, he had a 0 usage rate. Like, I'm not kidding.
He was like your appendix.
Yeah.
Not doing anything.
So,
he's there. It's part of your body, but it's not doing anything.
In the meantime, Luka's usage in the first quarter was a ridiculous 50, and for the game, a pretty ridiculous 48.7. So
the two combined for a 25 usage rate.
Yeah, but perfectly normal.
It's part of a larger. The Rui's comments are part of a larger conversation just about the way the Lakers offense is operating, particularly in first quarters. That we'll definitely try to get to before the end of the show, but certainly tomorrow ahead of the Toronto game. So the aging thing with LeBron, there are a lot of people, and I'm putting you in this group, but there are a lot of people who are not only, kind of want LeBron to be, who are ready for LeBron to finally lose the battle to Father Time. For some of them, it's because they've been saying it's coming for like 5 or 6 or 7 years now. And it's like, you want to be right. People have been looking for this for a while. There are some people who don't like LeBron who, like I said, the people who do think he's been stat padding or is overpaid or has held back the Lakers, whatever it is, who just want him to finally lose battle because they don't like the guy. It is interesting though, Monday's game looked like sort of what you would picture old man, not LeBron James, who no longer has it, what that might look like. And the question is that what is in store for the Lakers over the course of this year, or are there is the context here such that, perhaps people might want to slow the roll. I have my thoughts. I'm sure you have yours. Would you like to go first? I could go either way.
I mean, the first thing I would say that getting back to the idea of the stat padding and the streak, because I think it's actually connected to the question that you just raised. For me, the larger point isn't that LeBron was clearly, and again, I don't have an issue with it, dead set on keeping the streak alive. It's that it actually required work to do. That's actually the story, because the only way that you maintain this type of streak since, again, George W. Bush was the flipping president, although second term, I don't want to make this sound longer than
it's
really
like you're saying like it's impressive. It's not like you're talking like George H.W. Bush was president. Like that would be really impressive.
I think the only thing that prevented that is LeBron was not born. Or no, I don't know. Actually, he was not born. He was actually not born. Was he? I don't know. It doesn't matter. I don't want to get sidetracked. 84, yes, he was.
He was born. Yeah.
He was born. He was a little kid. But the biggest issue actually is that it took effort, because the only reason you can maintain a streak this long is because the overwhelming majority of it, hitting double digits, you do rolling out of bed. It is effortless. And it gets back to the thing I've talked about over the last few years with LeBron and age. And to me, the single biggest piece of evidence that age is catching up to LeBron, it's not in the numbers. It's not in the fact that he has to sometimes take defensive possessions off. It's not even injury. It's none of that. It's that it doesn't look easy for him anymore, because the majority of LeBron's career, man, he made dominance look easy.
I agree with that. There's certainly, a big shift in the aesthetics of what it looks like when LeBron is doing this. I think the point you're making is fair and applies broadly across, just watching LeBron play. I will say this though. We did spend a little bit of last season having this conversation. LeBron got off to a for him, slower start. He was at, down around 20 points a game. He, was sort of struggled with his shot a little bit early and stuff like that. And by December, he was averaging 25 points a game, with like 8 rebounds and, 7 rebounds and 8 assists. And by February, he averaged 29 a game with, and went nuclear. That was LeBron with training camp. And it makes a big difference when you have training camp and, you go in and you do your stuff. You got, that's a huge deal. This year, LeBron not only didn't have training camp, and I'm sure Andy will be back here in a moment. Not only did LeBron not have training camp, he didn't have a lot of his lead up to training camp. He missed a lot of the ramp up because of the sciatica, kept him from doing his normal routine before he got to his training camp routine. And I think, any of us, I'll use golf as an example. Any of us who have been golfers over the course of our lives, like I don't score like I used to because I don't play enough, but like I can still hit the ball. I can still hit the ball reasonably far. I haven't had to start clubbing up a bunch. Like it's basically the same. What is very different from me at age 25 playing golf, back in the day, I could park the car, go to the first tee, and swing a golf club. I cannot do that anymore 25 years later. I need time to warm up. I need time to stretch. I need time to get some practice swings in. When I'm done, I need to put a little ice on. I need to and that's what LeBron is like, where LeBron is at. He can't roll out of bed and just go do it anymore like he used to. It takes time. It takes effort. It takes it. And so I think people are overlooking the lack of training camp and especially the lack of preparation he was able to do for training camp when they're looking at these 5 games or so. it's for me going to be another month before I start looking at it and say, if we're getting a lot of these games in December, late December, January, my radar, my antenna will go up with a lot more intensity. Right now, I just look at this as a guy who's pushing 41, who's kind of stretching on the job.
Let's get more into this when we come back. I don't think that your take on this is unreasonable. And the truth is, none of us exactly know what's going on with LeBron. It's all speculative to some degree. But when we come back, I do have concerns that you're putting a bit too glass half full of a take on this, and also want to get into why, if it really is a month like you're predicting, that's a serious problem for this team.
Well, and plus, either way, they got to figure out what he's doing on this.
That's where I'm going.
Part of this.
That's where I'm going with this. So we'll get into it all coming up next. Locked on Lakers is brought to you by Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long using your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets change the game. It's people moving the action. When the momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never in a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood. Now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Obviously, like I said, none of us know exactly what is going on with LeBron right now, in large part because there's no template to even try to compare it against. Like LeBron playing this long with, if nothing else, the type of responsibility that he had just last season. There is no comparison that we can even try to make against it. So in that sense, I think everybody, including LeBron, is learning information in real time.
I would agree.
That being said, even acknowledging the part about having missed training camp, which I think is very real, the fact that he is, by his own admission, working his way back into game shape, into a flow. I'm sure there's even still building up body, all that sort of stuff. And those things all have to be accounted for. And you are correct that the start that he had last year wasn't necessarily slow, but it certainly wasn't dominant. And it wasn't
great.
It wasn't great, but I mean, it got worse as things went along and eventually led to LeBron needing to take those couple weeks off from the team. This is even worse than that so far in terms of the overall production, the overall presence, even I think acknowledging all of those very real contextual caveats that you brought up. I think those are all real. I still think, though, this is more stark. And
yeah, it absolutely is. There's
and
no question.
It's also stark in ways that feel like, as I always talk about, there will come a point in every great athlete's career, and even somebody like LeBron, who's been blessed with some of the greatest just physicality in the history of sports, and for the most of his career, incredible health. There comes a point where every athlete's body just stops cooperating.
Mm-hmm.
And, when LeBron was asked about after the Phoenix loss, not playing in the both ends of the back-to-back, and he basically said, man, getting old. Like, the reason is old. I am wondering how much LeBron is actually recognizing that we're reaching a place where the body really is not cooperating in ways that it was before, that he can't offset, work through, things like that. We'll see. Like, you are correct that more time is required. There's more time left in the season. But in the meantime, though, and I think this is also a part of why LeBron so far has not really been able to, other than maybe I'd say about 15, 18 combined minutes that he's played this year, really made his mark in the games that he's playing. Increasingly over the 5 games he's been available, I think his role has become more and more unclear, like what he is actually supposed to be doing. And I don't know if that's because they're still trying to figure out the dynamic between him and Austin and Luka, and LeBron being in a place where, he's never been, I want to say, he's never been like the third option, third best player, however you want to put that, which for the time being, at best, that's where he's at. Maybe he starts looking more like himself, surpasses Austin, like who knows? But for the time being, that's where he's at. He's never done anything like that before. There's also the question of how much are the age and physical issues preventing them from landing on the role that they want for LeBron, because they still can't quite figure out what he can do and how to work that into what they're doing. I don't know the answers, but what we're seeing right now, especially considering the first game back, there was a lot of fun in that fourth quarter. And, there were times where LeBron looked like he was having a blast being back out there. It's looking increasingly less fun and more like a trudge for him.
I don't know. I mean, he looked like he was having fun against the Clippers. It's like, it's just, some of this is just aesthetic. We're literally not used to seeing what this looks like when LeBron looks even kind of mortal. But I think the role issue is also part of this, because, Rui, I don't know how many, did you happen to look up how many touches LeBron had in that first quarter?
I can look it up right now.
I mean, it was lower than normal, I'm sure. It's just the usage for Luka impacts everyone. I think LeBron is, to his credit, I would say, trying really hard to make sure there is no perception that LeBron is coming back and bigfooting, Luka, who's having, an MVP caliber season, or trying to, pull rank on Austin Reaves, who is having an all-star caliber season, like, all this stuff. So, I mean, I think that stuff is important.
Really quick, they don't break it down by quarters, so I can't tell.
Okay, but like, what were his touches overall? Like, how many?
Overall, 57. To put it in perspective, Austin had 69, Luka had 89. LeBron was third on the team. I imagine it was pretty backloaded, but who's to say?
And it's also
sure, I don't know.
You're talking about a guy who's sort of been a point guard over a lot of his career. So, I ask the questions just because they have not reached a point where consistently they're able to leverage the full capabilities of what LeBron is doing. I don't think his legs are at his outside shot yet. And so the Lakers haven't been able to use LeBron as like a weapon on the perimeter, which is, I think, over the course of the season, something they really want to be able to do. He has developed into one of their better outside shooters. And so, become, based on the roster and his own improvements as a 3-point shooter, one of their best outside shooters. A lot of his success has come in mismatches down in the post, beating players up the floor, using his body, using his physicality. So is he playing by the basket? Is he playing on the perimeter? Are you putting him at the elbow and using LeBron as a kind of a pivot player or something like that? But you also don't want to take the handball out of Luka's hands quite as much. So there's just a lot of feeling out that I think is still going on, because they're probably doing a few things at once, which is accommodating a little bit of a different pecking order, but also maybe there are a few things that maybe you just, don't want LeBron doing quite as much of. So you got to account for that. He hasn't shot the ball well, so that changes your approach there. It's just, to me, it's 5 games for a guy who didn't play in training camp. And it's just, if he were, there are guys who have come back, and I'm not saying this, you're right, it is very stark. His numbers are way down and all this stuff. But broadly, the important player comes back to a lineup and it takes a minute to figure out what to do. is not a brand new story. So what I think is more important is, I think the truth about LeBron is going to be somewhere between, wow, still second team All NBA last year, still second team All NBA last year, and washed. I think there's a lot of space in between those, and that's basically where LeBron will land in one way or another. But what they have to figure out is, what does that mean for how he's used inside of an offense, and how do you take that skill set and maximize it? Because the guy, one thing he will be able to do is roll out of bed at age 75, stand on an NBA court and whip passes around that can be really effective. There's still a lot of ways to use him, even if he's not your true focal point offensively. And that's that's going to take time.
I've actually, on Lakers Talk, my weekly ESPN LA 710 Lakers show, which, by the way, Wednesday night, it'll be on 6 to 8 p.m. Pacific time. Sean Woodley, the host of Locked on Raptors, is going to be on with me, and we're going to preview Thursday's game against Toronto, which I think could be a very good, very challenging game. We'll, I'm sure, get into it more for the show heading into Thursday. I've got some questions about that. A little bit involves Jared Vanderbilt, but if you guys want to learn more about the Raptors, and also we're going to talk a little bit about just the East Coast in general, because this went from being a part of a road trip that, before the season began, seemed like it was going to be kind of cake as far as East Coast road trips go, and now it looks far more challenging. But like you, I think there is space in between second team All NBA and washed, but I actually think that it is more fair right now to temper the expectations for LeBron. And I hope people can understand that's not the same thing as crapping on him or saying that he's a bad player or anything like that. It's trying to keep these expectations fair and realistic for everybody involved. And also, I think, help people analyze what's happening with the team better, because if LeBron is somewhere between that second All NBA and washed, there can still be a useful player in there, but it's a very different player. And I think in order to evaluate this fairly, we have to frame it that way. But I was going to say, I've talked about before, I imagine in my head LeBron as kind of a offensively souped up, defensively souped down version of Draymond Green, in the way that Draymond is so important for making that Golden State offense work. And, you know, with his playmaking and his understanding of where everybody's supposed to be and helping put everybody in the right places, LeBron can direct that traffic while being still a better scoring version of Draymond. He can also, in a lot of ways, I think, help quarterback elements of the defense without being as individually impactful as Draymond. So that's something that I've been thinking about. Again, we don't know exactly what it's going to be until LeBron is on the court longer and hopefully looking frankly more physically healthy when he's out there. And
I think there's a good chance in 6 weeks we're looking at this going, well, LeBron looks pretty good.
There is. I think there's a chance. I think there's also a chance that we could be looking at this in 6 weeks and saying, okay, we really have to recalibrate all expectations. Unfortunately, I think it's gaslighting to not acknowledge that as a real possibility. Before we go, sad news for Laker fans. It was just announced today that Elton Campbell passed away. The cause of death has not yet been released. Obviously, he was part of those 90s Lakers teams with Nick Van Exel and Eddie Jones, Cedric Sabalas, and those teams that I think a lot of fans now look back with a little more affection, especially because eventually Kobe and Shaq brought some championships. Eldon played with Kobe and Shaq in the early part of that team up. He was an LA guy. He played at Morningside High, which is where Byron Scott went as well. They were not playing at the same time. Byron's obviously older than Eldon, but Byron told the LA Times, quote, "I just remember his demeanor. That's why we nicknamed him Easy E. He was just so cool, nothing speeding him up. He was going to take his time. He was just easy. He was such a good dude. I loved Easy." Cedric Sabalas, quote, "This one hurt to the bone. Grew up as kids together," he said on Instagram. And like I said, Laker fans, like longtime Laker fans, remember Eldon. He could at times be a frustrating player for a lot of Laker fans. But again, I think with time, a lot of these eras just gain more affection. And I think it, especially with him being an LA guy, it's sad news for Laker fans.
Locked on Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with over 37,000 subscribers to the channel. We will be back after the game on Thursday. Everyone, we'll see you then.